days I've been working with musicians that come from completely different upbringing.
That was what superstar DJ Avicii told Radio.com as a preface to explaining his genre-defying surprise hit album, True. He debuted the album at Ultra Music Conference about a month prior to this interview. It mixed live instrumentation and DJ playback, generating mixed reviews from the dance music community.
There's got like so many like people talking about like me dropping like country music and ultra. My album is like some would say there might be some country influence in certain tracks even, but you know, we got the idea because Mike and his wife do like some pretty like freaky like bluegrass stuff, and it's really cool. Yeah, I looked at that, and that's how we got talking first, and we wanted to bring kind of like a live element.
So what exactly is the difference between bluegrass and country? Ricky Skaggs, a Grammy Award-winning and #1 hit-making country artist, breaks it down.
To me, the core sound of bluegrass is a mandolin, a banjo, an acoustic guitar, a fiddle, and an upright bass fiddle. Those are the 5 instruments that, to me, really define bluegrass as being what it originally started out to be.
That does not sound like what we are used to hearing from country music / pop crossover megastar Taylor Swift. It does sound like Mumford & Sons, who are decidedly not a country band.
The integration of bluegrass instruments into other types of music is really an interesting thing. And you mentioned Mumford & Sons guys, and they're really kind of rock and roll almost. It's like bluegrass is the new rock and roll or something, but it's and it was back in when Monroe kind of came up with it.
Bill Monroe was the father of bluegrass music. The genre takes its name from his band, the Bluegrass Boys. He wrote what he called true songs, autobiographic music inspired by the painful events of his own life that shaped the high lonesome sound that would define the genre. Formed in 1946, his band included Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, who would break off on their own, playing solo, together, and with their band, the Foggy Mountain Boys.
Bluegrass music actually was country music in the 1940s. It became more of a subgenre of country music in the 50s, but bluegrass really first hit mainstream popular music in the early 1960s, thanks to the theme song for the Beverly Hillbillies. The song was called The Ballad of Jug Clampett. It was done by Flatt and Scruggs. It went to #1.
As the first stars faded in the east through town, she made her way. She said her prayers and made her peace at William's resting place.
Before the invention of bluegrass, all the music we currently think of as vintage country, Appalachian, or Americana fell under one umbrella: folk music. This American tradition was actually imported from Europe.
In Ireland, they have things called céilís. And I remember going to my first céilí, would have been in 1978. We were invited to come to this pickin'. They said, "Oh, it's a céilí." And I had no idea what a céilí was, but it was a get-together. Well, I walked in, and I looked around, and I thought I'd died and gone to Eastern Kentucky. I've been around a lot of Irish musicians since my first time in Ireland, and they all grow up learning to play. It's almost like sacred to them to learn just exactly how that melody is played, and they don't deviate from that. When I hear Irish folk music, I don't hear a sadness and a brokenness and a lonesomeness in their music so much. I hear more joy, more happiness, more happy-go-lucky kind of songs. But after being in America for 50 or 60 years, missing their homeland, I think after a generation there was that high lonesome sadness that came into the music.
The folk music tradition that came to America with generations of European immigrants served as the building blocks for the music that would become country, soul, R&B, and rock and roll.
When I heard the Beatles the first time, I think I mentioned it in my book, A Kentucky Traveler, I thought, they've heard the Everly Brothers. Well, I know Don and Phil was inspired by the Louvin Brothers, and I know the Louvin Brothers was inspired by the Stanley Brothers and the Monroe Brothers, and so I just saw that connection of those brothers' harmonies, you know, with the Beatles.
Since this time last year.
Tumbling Bones are a band from Portland, Maine, who play traditional music from the folk and bluegrass canon and write original compositions in the style of the old stuff, using only acoustic instruments and their voices.
We all wanted to learn more about the roots of the music that we grew up with, and we grew up with rock music and folk rock, and if you want to learn about the roots of Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or the Grateful Dead or Bob Dylan, it takes you back to American traditional folk music, including bluegrass.
I'll just try another town. I've come a long way since this time last year.
It turns out that Mumford & Sons and Avicii have a common source of bluegrass inspiration, the soundtrack for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Bluegrass music kind of goes in and out of the mainstream. It's had a real resurgence in mainstream popular music, thanks in large part, I would say, to T-Bone Burnett. T-Bone Burnett almost single-handedly brought it back with the soundtrack to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He then had such huge success producing the fantastic collaboration between Robert Plant and Alison Krauss.
I always feel slightly embarrassed saying how much of an influence Oh Brother was, because that feels so recent. Marcus Mumford told Rolling Stone this in an interview for their 2013 cover story on the biggest little folk band in the world. The inspirational soundtrack featured the surprise hit song, Man of Constant Sorrow, an old-timey standard interpreted by Dan Tyminski and the Soggy Bottom Boys. The band named an ode to the Flatt & Scruggs group, the Foggy Mountain Boys. Tyminski sings the track Hey Brother on Avicii's album. While rock and pop are happily embracing the acoustic sounds of traditional music and the instruments of bluegrass, one area of music isn't interested and hasn't been for a while: mainstream country.
Emily remembers when the Wide Open Spaces was going to be a single, and the label called us in because we were really pushing for that to be the single, and they said, well, we're going to have to take the banjo off.
And we
it's
fought.
not mainstream country.
Right.
And we said, absolutely not, and turn it up.
People would say, well, bluegrass doesn't sell, you know, and you know, it's so outdated and everything. And what my comment would be back is, well, then why does McDonald's, why does Toyota, why does American Express, all these huge corporations, why do they have a banjo or a mandolin or a dobro or something like that in their commercials? Because it grabs your ear. You will listen to it when you hear it. They are smart enough to figure that out. Why can't the record labels figure that out, you know?